Now, the government wants to bring in new laws which they say will make buildings safer after the fire at Grenfell Tower. The Building Safety Bill is designed to clarify where responsibility for building safety lies and who should pay for repairs. It's been described by the Community Secretary Robert Jenrick as the most significant and fundamental changes to building safety legislation in decades. But some people who live in flats with cladding are less enthusiastic. I've been speaking to Jenny Reid. She's one of 500,000 leaseholders who are living in blocks of flats with dangerous flammable cladding. And she's written to the Community Secretary to tell him what she thinks of the new draft bill. And she told me what was in the letter.
I wish you would walk a day in our shoes. Struggling to sleep every night, worrying about the safety of our buildings, our ability to pay the bills that we face, and the chance that we may lose our homes. Having to choose not to start a family, not to take a job, and putting your life on hold.
Is that how you feel then? You've had to put your whole life on hold because you've got this cladding on your building?
Yeah, and that's really been my life since February this year when I found out. So basically our block has unsafe timber cladding and also fire safety issues. And since we found out, we've been told to expect bills of tens of thousands of pounds to remediate. Our insurance premium's gone up several times over and we're actually at risk of losing it altogether. So I'm personally expecting a bill of up to £50,000 and it's just been unbelievably stressful. This is my first home and I'm basically now facing losing my home and potentially bankruptcy as well. That's the same for hundreds of thousands of people across the country.
You say the draft bill has come as a shock to leaseholders in your letter to the Minister. Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, I think every one of us wants to live in a safe home. However, if this bill goes through in its current form, it's going to make it much easier for building owners to pass large costs to the leaseholders. So before this scandal, the leaseholder was responsible for the maintenance of the building via their service charge. So things like painting the halls, upkeep of the grounds, that kind of thing. But it was unimaginable that they'd be facing the sort of costs which had been caused by poor building regulations.
The government has told us that there are ongoing discussions with leaseholders to help develop a funding solution for future high-cost remediation works before the bill is introduced to Parliament to ensure that leaseholders are protected from unaffordable costs like the ones that you've described. Does that make you feel any better?
Not really, because it's not specified in the bill. The problem is that this remediation is going to take years, and I know that the bill could take up to 5 years to go through, but there's been some estimates of up to 5 to 10 years to remediate the various buildings. And within the bill itself, it doesn't differentiate between historic issues and issues with new buildings. There's nothing in there to protect leaseholders from these costs. And another big issue as well is that when remediation like this is classed as building safety, it means that actually certain processes which protect leaseholders can be sidestepped. So normally, if there's remediation which is going to cost more than £250 per leaseholder, then there has to be rounds of consultations, there has to be various tenders, and that's to make sure that the best solution is put in place. But if something's classed as building safety, then they can skip that whole process, and that obviously leaves that process open to abuse and possible inflation of costs too, which we have seen in the past.
The responsibility for repairing unsafe buildings has been a point of contention since the 2017 Grenfell disaster. This bill does try to clear that up, but you don't like the way that it's trying to clear it up because it's putting the onus onto the leaseholders.
Absolutely. And, the government has said on many occasions that the leaseholders are completely faultless in this. Everybody who bought a flat got a survey, they did their due diligence. There was no way that they could have known that their buildings were unsafe. Really, they shouldn't be made to pay to fix poor regulations and oversight.
That was Jenny Reid. Well, Nigel Glenn is from the Association of Residential Managing Agents. Nigel, so this is the first time in this bill that it makes it quite black and white in the draft bill who's going to be responsible for safety repairs, and it lies with the leaseholder. How will it work?
Well, I think Jenny's absolutely hit the nail on the head when she was talking about how this actually will work going forward. We don't think it's right the way it's currently structured to have this separate charge, because there are those protections already in the service charge about the £250 and so forth. So we think it would be actually more sensible just to put this within the service charge. I mean, there will be additional costs, we know that, but I also agree completely with Jenny that leaseholders shouldn't be held to account for historic problems. I mean, it's not their fault at all.
I mean, the government has said that there are plans in place to pay for all of that historical stuff before this bill comes in to place, which could be many years. So they shouldn't have to, should they?
Well, we hope not. There is a huge amount of work going on in the background trying to figure out how we can do this. The government's pledged the 1.6 billion. That doesn't cover everything. We're seeing leaseholders suffering enormous charges for waking watch, for buildings insurance, and so forth. So there's a lot more work to do, but there is a lot of work going on in the background to try to help.
How much do you think this separate charge might end up being?
Well, if you look at what Dame Judith Hacker proposed, there's a whole new role called a building safety manager. And the impact assessment in the bill itself says that could cost £6,500 to £10,000 per building. Then, of course, you have ongoing costs for safety. And I think the thing we're all worried about here, as Jenny pointed out, was the historic costs. And that's the bit we're really trying to get our heads around.
Why is it a problem that it is a separate charge?
Well, if it is a separate charge, the way it's currently structured, the leaseholder just has to pay within 28 days. And as Jenny said, if it was a part of the service charge, there are tests for reasonableness, there's consultation, and so forth. So we can't see what the good reason is, apart from transparency, to have it as a separate charge.
Do you think that it also could make these flats harder to sell if there is this separate charge as well as your maintenance charge that you have to pay?
No, I don't think so, because what people look at is how much am I going to have to pay, and how that's split out is different. The costs will go up, that's inevitable, because safety does cost. Nobody wants another Grenfell. But that'll be across the board. So I don't think it'll affect the sales per se.
Well, this is a draft at the moment, so it's out to consultation. What will you be telling the government about how you think the bill should be written up?
Well, there's quite a few bits on administration, which I won't go into, but our big concern is the splitting it out from the service charge, because that's just going to increase administration costs. It's a whole new bunch of charges that need to go out. And as Jenny said, that removes the protection that's already enshrined in service charge. So that's our big point.
Jenny was also concerned that your members, managing agents, might charge extra commissions or inflated costs. How can you make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, it's not in the managing agent's interest to do that, because service charges are zero sum. There's no profit or loss in a service charge. So when a managing agent increases the costs, you're going to be shot as the messenger. There's no incentive for a managing agent to do that.
Nigel Glenn, thank you very much for coming on You and Yours today.